Thank you for watching this short video. You are watching part 1 of a 5-part video series. The video series deals with a paper entitled A Digital Humanities Database, a Tool for Accessible Democracy. My name is Lester Levitt. I am a PhD graduate assistant in the School of Public Administration at Florida Atlantic University in Boca Raton, Florida. I am uniquely qualified to put together a paper of this sort because I am a former accountant specializing in franchise development. I am a survivor of spiritual abuse and Christian fundamentalism, and I say with a smile on my face as a joke, I am a former heterosexual. I have 4 grown children from a 25-year marriage to a woman, but I am now married to a man for the past 5.5 years. I am an activist, I am a social justice advocate, and I am an ardent champion of the underdog, which is what over the past 6 years has put me on a quest to develop something that will change the way democracy works for minorities. This paper advances through 5 topics: crowdsourcing and democracy, policymaking and agenda setting in today's climate, the global and organizational elite, technology, democracy and the new governing paradigm, and a practical application of what I have called the MCIS systems. The 5 parts are each clearly marked in the top left corner by an icon so that you know which video you are watching. This is part 1, crowdsourcing and democracy. The Arab Revolution, or as some called it, the Arab Spring movement, started in January of 2011. Of primary significance was what came to be known as the Friday of Rage. This is a picture of Tahrir Square in Egypt, and as we all know, it did not start in Egypt. It started in a small town called Sidi Bouzid in Tunisia. It spread eventually to Libya and Yemen. In May, there was what came to be known the May of Facebook, which was a social media revolution that spawned protests against the economic union's austerity the austerity that was imposed upon smaller European nations as a result of fiscal crisis. Greece, of course, was the primary country. Italy, Spain, and here in Portugal also became known as hotbeds for these protests. This picture is of the Puerta del Sol in Madrid. By October, these protests had spread to the United States with the Occupy Wall Street movement, where images of the protests were captured and demonstrated a very different climate than what protesters in the United States had ever been used to, with the pepper spraying incidents. By the end of the year, Time magazine honored the protester as the Person of the Year, and estimates were that through the year there had been protests in 951 cities in 82 different countries. Protest narratives are a sort of discourse. And the problem with protests is that unless you get into the mainstream media, you cannot get your discourse adopted as a governing narrative. The mainstream media channels in the United States talked about the Occupy Wall Street movements as 150 million Americans that were being lazy. They were graduates, they didn't want to work very hard, and they spent all of their time living at home or living in the streets on these protest camps. And so the narrative wasn't about greed per se, the narrative was about who the protesters were. And this illustrates very, very clearly that even though these protesters had been creating incredible amounts of media in the blogosphere, they had agendas, they had what came to be known as meeting times every day, where they would put together agendas for what they thought could be changed, what policies could be adopted, and it became to be known as the 99% against the 1% who were greedy. But the mainstream media didn't adopt any of the narratives about new governing policies. They only captured these little sound bites. The takeaway from all of this throughout 2011 is that protest narratives are not governing narratives. That's a very important distinction that we should have learned from the storming of the Bastille and the Women's March to Versailles. But protesters alone are very seldom, throughout history, successful in actually changing the way they are governed, because there's another institutional or organizational elite group that is always poised in the background, ready to come in and take advantage of a vacuum created by a protest or a revolution. In the case of the Egyptian election, which was held in January of 2012, the Revolution Continues Party, which is the party with the closest ties to the hundreds of thousands of people in Tahrir Square, only captured 7 seats in the new parliament, which is a representation of 1.4%. The Islamic groups, because they were already organized, waiting in the wings for their opportunity to present itself, were able to capture 67% of the new parliament. What is critical when it comes to crowdsourcing of media and democracy is that you make a connection between the community conversations that take place, especially during a protest movement, and the actual social change that you want to bring about. And what happens in the middle is altering the discourse. This slide perhaps illustrates a little more clearly what is important as it relates to structure and retrievability when you are creating media. From community conversations, the first process is a framing process, which is actually done with a goal of structuring new discourse, a change in the discourse. And then process number 2 is a process of contextualizing so that that new discourse can actually become a governing narrative. Community conversations now are possible because they become possible as a tool of social change because of technology. Countries throughout the world are making enormous strides in bridging the digital divide, both through cell phone technology and expanding their mobile telephone grid, as well as making broadband internet accessible in their major cities. So this is something that we have to bear in mind. The theory that supports what I am proposing for this crowdsourced media is a theory that's based and rooted firmly in cultural anthropology. This kind of crowdsourced data should be at the very heart of policymaking and governance, but up until now it hasn't been. This was something that was advocated as early as the 1970s by Frederick Thayer and Clifford Geertz. Frederick Thayer was an academic in public administration, and he talked about institutional memory in his book, An End to Hierarchy, An End to Competition. Clifford Geertz was the leading cultural anthropologist. Actually, he probably created cultural anthropology as a study, as a field, and he talked extensively about a consultable record of what man has said and how important it would be to have this. And so this crowdsourcing of data has been around for a very long time, but what hasn't come out of it until now is the ability to make it retrievable, not only retrievable as individual records, but actually retrievable as narrative threads, so that it's supportive of new policy making. And what these threads are actually comprised of are items that are in media known as ideographs. As bricks are to barriers, ideographs are to narratives. So these individual ideographs are what are woven together to create governing narratives. And that is the end of part 1. I hope you will continue watching the remaining 4 parts of the series. Thank you.